Chad Pergram joins us now with more reaction to this latest decision. Hey, Chad.
Julie, good afternoon. Maine Secretary of State Ballot said that former President Trump was aware of what was termed the tinder surrounding the presidential election. Bellows contends Mr. Trump, quote, chose to light the match, which triggered the riot. But it's unclear if the 14th Amendment was designed for this.
The people that framed that and wrote that knew exactly what an insurrection or rebellion was, and that was the Civil War, where 600,000 American citizens died fighting each other. The drafters of this and the people that then ratified it in all the states, I think is just an absolute ludicrous legal joke.
Some political adversaries of the former president are coming to his defense.
It really opens up Pandora's box. I don't think that this ultimately will be legally sustained by the U.S. Supreme Court, but I do think that this is going to be a constant throughout the election year, where there's going to be different parts of these legal cases that are going to be front and center.
Getting booted from the ballot in Maine is more important than Colorado. That's because Maine splits its electoral votes. 2 for the statewide winner, 2 for congressional districts. Mr. Trump secured 1 of Maine's 4 electoral votes in 2020.
All right, my friends, get ready to free your mind because it's showtime. J.R. Dukes at your service. Appreciate you joining me today. I got another great video coming your way. We have a situation going on in the state of Maine. The loony, crazy Secretary of State that you see right over my shoulder here, she has unilaterally decided she's going to take Donald Trump's name off the ballot. I'm sure that helps her BFF, Joe Biden, as you see in the selfie that was taken at a recent party at the White House. Well, it is what it is. You got some serious woke loons out there, and we got to do what we got to do to stop them. Let's hope the U.S. Supreme Court can step in and make this right, because, friends, this is a tragedy for our country. They're sidestepping the impeachment option that there is in the Constitution that requires a 2/3 votes of the Senate and a majority vote in the House of Representatives. This is so wrong. This is so evil, and it threatens the fabric of our society, and we cannot allow it. Without further ado, let's get in today's video right now.
Fox News contributor and host of Tommy Lauren, is fearless on Outkick. Tommy Lauren. My God, that's a lot of Tommy Lauren. Yeah. And director of the Tech Policy Center at the Heritage Foundation, Kara Frederick, and Fox News contributor and host of the David Webb Show on Sirius XM Patriot, David Webb. Not wearing my favorite cross earring today. But anyway, I'll forgive you on that. Maine Secretary of State Shenna Bellows certainly doesn't hide her ties to the far left. She has selfies with President Biden plastered all over her social media. She's also previously served as the executive director of the ACLU and was an outspoken supporter of Trump's second impeachment. And just hours after her landmark ruling against the former president, she ran to the liberal media.
First and foremost, it's important to know my oath to the Constitution, my obligations to the Constitution and rule of law come before any other consideration. No other factors could weigh on that decision and did not. I'm duty bound to make this determination.
You know, it's always so interesting to see these Democrats, these liberals, say how much they love the Constitution, how much they're bound by the Constitution, but yet they will not uphold the Constitution. She is lying. She is worse than anybody to date, in my opinion, that has engaged in so-called election interference. You want election interference? This is election interference. There is currently a recall right now to have her kicked off the ballot, and I personally hope they're very successful in doing so because, madam, you are guilty of election interference prima facie on its face, and you should be ashamed of yourself.
Laid out that the record demonstrates that, in fact, the events of January 6, 2021, which were unprecedented and tragic, were an insurrection in the meaning of Section 3 of the...
Yeah, see, that's another thing. She's quoting Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. She has made herself the judge, jury, and executioner. That is not her role. She forgets to mention that the 14th Amendment under Section 5 authorizes solely for Congress. Congress is the sole entity that has the ability to set rules. They have an obligation and an ability, the sole ability, to set rules to determine what is an insurrection, when and if should someone be removed, and what is the process for doing that. Donald Trump has not had his due process rights. This is so fundamental to our Constitution Constitution that when we are accused, before we lose our property, before we lose our freedom, before we lose our life, we have the right to due process, which means we get to go to court, we get to hear the allegations, the charges against us, we get to put on our own evidence to show our innocence or whatever the case may be about. We have a right to cross-examine witnesses. We have a right to have a lawyer with us to help defend us in the judicial proceedings. And first and foremost, we have the right to have an independent judge and a jury hear whatever the grievance is and make a decision. This woman has decided she's judge, jury, executioner. That's not right. Madam, you should be ashamed of yourself. You should be recalled from office bluntly. You should be gone immediately.
The 14th Amendment. And finally, in reviewing the facts presented, the evidence, the law, the history, we determined under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment that Mr. Trump engaged in insurrection and therefore was disqualified.
And earlier this morning, Bellows doubled down on her decision, and she dodged questions when asked if her ruling would silence voters. Watch.
In terms of the criticism that your decision takes away the right for voters to have their voice heard, do you believe that's a valid concern?
Again, my first and foremost obligation is my oath to uphold the Constitution and the rule of law. Every state is different. My obligation and duty.
Folks, she knows she's caught. She knows she's toast. This is what it boils down to right here. She's a political hack. She's a friend of Joe. You know what's going on. I know what's going on.
My sole consideration is my oath to uphold the Constitution.
Chad Pergram joins us now with more reaction to this latest decision. Hey, Chad.
Julie, good afternoon. Maine Secretary of State Shenna Bellows said that former President Trump was aware of what was termed the tinder surrounding the presidential election. Bellows contends Mr. Trump, quote, chose to light the match, which triggered the riot. But it's unclear if the 14th Amendment was designed for this.
The people that framed that and wrote that knew exactly what an insurrection or rebellion was, and that was the Civil War, where 600,000 American citizens died fighting each other. The drafters of this and the people that then ratified it in all the states, I think is just an absolute ludicrous legal joke.
Some political adversaries of the former president are coming to his defense.
It really opens up Pandora's box. I don't think that this ultimately will be legally sustained by the U.S. Supreme Court, but I do think that this is going to be a constant throughout the election year where there's going to be different parts of these legal cases that are going to be front and center.
Getting booted from the ballot in Maine is more important than Colorado. That's because Maine splits its electoral votes. 2 for the statewide winner, 2 for congressional districts. Mr. Trump secured 1 of Maine's 4 electoral votes in 2020.
Yeah, so what he's saying there is, unlike the state of Colorado, where he's been kicked off the ballot initially, Donald Trump did not carry the state of Colorado the last time around. Now, that doesn't mean he would not carry it now. However, in Maine, they split their electoral votes. I believe they have 4. And on the last election, Donald Trump actually carried 1. So they split him. It's not a winner takes all. It's a split. And if this is allowed to stand, he would theoretically at least lose 1 electoral college vote.
There is now an effort to impeach Bellows.
Shenna Bellows has unilaterally disenfranchised 300,060 Maine voters with this partisan move. Maine is made up of citizens and not subjects in the Duchy of Shenna Bellows.
Democratic Maine Representative Jared Golden says he voted to impeach the former president following the riot. But Golden says Mr. Trump should be allowed on the ballot unless he is found guilty of insurrection. Julie?
All right, Chad Pergram, thank you so much. You know, it is quite, it seems, unconstitutional, Laura. I mean, if you look at these actual states that are deciding to convict the president, he hasn't even been charged yet, right? The former president on insurrection. They're the judge and the jury. Is that how this works now?
I feel like this is also a lot of attention grabbing. They know that they're going to get their 15 minutes of fame. They know they're going to be able to parade around on all the liberal leftist networks and feel like they've really done something. As Governor Ron DeSantis said, these probably are not going to be upheld. They're not going to pass legal muster. The Supreme Court is going to have to act. And I think that they well know this. It's more about getting their 15 minutes of fame. We know that others have run on that pledge to get Trump. So they feel like they have to satisfy that itch and that urge with their Trump derangement syndrome. And also they have to keep Trump's legal issues at the top of mind because they don't want to talk about Joe Biden's dismal poll numbers, his dismal economy. They don't want to talk about the thousands of illegal immigrants that are flooding in to our cities and states each and every single day. They would rather talk about Trump because that's easier than talking about the mess they've created. So they get their 15 minutes of fame. They soak up all the headlines. So it seems like it's a problem for Democrats, but really they're manipulating the whole process.
You know, Ron DeSantis made a very good point, basically calling out this double standard and saying that this is a Pandora's box. What if a Republican were to come out and simply say, because, you know, our current president is undergoing an impeachment inquiry at the time. What if a Republican leader in any state, you name it, decides we're going to take Biden off of the ballot? They wouldn't be able to.
Folks, this is extremely important that we all understand. Let's just hypothetically talk about what would happen if, by some hopefully terrible set of circumstances, the Supreme Court was not to act, or the Supreme Court simply turned down this appeal, or if they ruled against Donald Trump, and hopefully this is only hypothetical, it would be complete chaos. It would be literally a constitutional crisis. Why would it be a constitutional crisis? This has only happened before in the year 1860, right before the Civil War, where the southern states took Abraham Lincoln off of the ballot. So this is the last time this has happened in American history, where you had a candidate removed from the ballot. And we all know what that led to, which was the Civil War. Obviously, this would be a very serious situation. This would literally be the constitutional crisis of all time. And you would have the southern states and the northern states. Let's just say you would have Republican states and Democrat states, especially the Republican states. They would seek revenge. They would be taking Joe Biden's name, saying that he created an insurrection, for example, by failing to do his duty to maintain the border, by failing to do his duty in all sorts of different ways. They would probably end up taking his name off the ballot. It would be complete chaos. And I would hate to think what would happen to our country in that circumstance. This is not really a funny event. This is a very serious event. Our country is very important to the world. We are the last best hope of mankind. The United States cares and takes care of the entire world. And these people are playing around and screwing around with our Constitution and the very fabric that holds our society together, that allows us to earn money, take care of our families, and enjoy our lives and enjoy the gifts that God gave us all. And this is ridiculous. This has to stop. These people should be ashamed of themselves, and I am really PO'd over this whole situation. Shame on you people. Shame on you liberals, you Dems, you woke people. This is wrong. This should not stand for one more second, and I really call on the U.S. Supreme Court to see what this is and to take this up immediately and rule against it. This is unbelievable, folks, and I hope it ends quickly.
To do that, and if they did, there would be a huge outcry. But when it happens to a former president who happens to be a Republican, who obviously has some issues in the court system, it's a different story.
Yeah, and think about Wisconsin during Scott Walker's time. They took over the state house. They did millions of dollars of damage. Yeah. That's what would happen if, say, in Texas, they took Biden off the ballot. That's what would happen in any red state like Florida. But when you go beyond this, and to Tommy's point, what you see here is blatant political ploy. First of all, we have to believe that Shauna Bellows is either ignorant of actually reading 2 paragraphs in Section 3 in the 14th Amendment, which states quite clearly that it's an officer of the United States. It's elector, by the way, she's an elector. She was a Biden elector in 2020, elector of the president or vice president, beyond being no charge of insurrection, which they haven't proffered, they haven't prosecuted, they haven't proven. There's nothing here. And Tommy's right. This is all about press for the moment, keeping the legal ball up in the air. The Supreme Court has to weigh in on Colorado, presumably by January 5th, right, because that's when they have to print their ballots. And that decision, that stare decisis, will carry down to the other courts. But the Democrats will keep doing this. She puts it right to the state Supreme Court. Why? She knows it's garbage. I mean, just call it what it is.
I can answer that question. It's arrogant, and it's hers. If you look at the statement, Julie, that she put out there when she filed this motion and she's defending her decision, she says, I conclude that Mr. Trump used a false narrative in election fraud. I likewise conclude that Mr. Trump was aware of the likelihood for violence and at least initially supported its use. I mean, this is all about her. I mean, it's Maine. She's out of her league. She's out of her lane. It's definitely going to the Supreme Court. They're going to strike this down. There's no way they can't legally. And by the way, that amendment that she's citing in this, you mentioned how ludicrous it is. 1868, guys. This is when this was put in the Constitution. The 14th Amendment, basically, it barred those who had sworn up to the Constitution from holding office if they engaged in insurrection. Pretty sure Donald Trump was not either charged or convicted of it.
It's like I said a minute ago, she's right. It was put in the Constitution. What did she say? 1886, whatever it was. It was 1880 that they took Abraham Lincoln's name off of the ballot at that time, and we saw what that led to, and then they passed this 14th Amendment. Hopefully, this is reversed quickly.
Insurrection.
Well, and this was also put in Section 3 because it would cover Confederate officials who wanted to. Yeah, exactly. And I'm pretty sure that Trump wasn't around back then. I don't know.
Well, in their minds, he was the Confederate president. But this is also about fear and loathing. The American people have to fear dictatorship, autocracy, the rise of white supremacy. They're basically caricaturing Trump, but not just Trump, the entire nation. They're saying half of you, just to use that number, are this caricature.
Right. Well, so and I want to talk about the Supreme Court. They've got till January 5th to essentially come out and put, so this is on pause. The Colorado GOP has appealed. Now you've got you've got Colorado, you've got Michigan, and now Maine. The Supreme Court needs to get in and quick.
Yeah, and I think they will. But it shouldn't have to be the backstop against these imperious bureaucrats who are trying to, frankly, disenfranchise the people, because that's what they're doing. As you said, it is arrogance. It is this particular woman who used to be the executive director of the ACLU saying, I believe, me, I. And it follows that specific trend, right? Like, we know what's best for you. We elites know what's best for half of the American people. We at Twitter don't want you to see the Hunter Biden laptop story, because if you guys get that information, you might make the wrong decision. That is a trend. That is what we're seeing over and over again. And it has to be stopped, because we believe in the rule of law here in America, not the rule of one woman who thinks she knows what's best for us.
My friends, these people, what they're doing is they are trying to get their name in the history books. That's just my opinion. It's their 15 minutes of fame. You take this particular woman right here, the Secretary of State from the state of Maine. She is just having her 15 minutes of fame. She thinks it's a funny thing to do. It's a great thing to do. Her name will be in the history books forever and ever as the individual that took down Donald Trump, or at least attempted to take down Donald Trump. These people are sick. They're political hacks. They are not putting our country first. They should be completely ashamed of themselves, just like the Supreme Court of the state of Colorado. There were, I believe it was a 4-3 decision. There were several Democrats that were strong, and they did what needed to be done as far as turning down the request to take Donald Trump's name off the ballot. They understood that Donald Trump did not have due process. They understood that Congress, and Congress alone, was responsible for interpreting the 14th Amendment. But these people are terrible Americans. They're terrible people. They should seriously be ashamed of themselves. A lot of the media, in my opinion, seems like they're taking, well, it's not that important. The Supreme Court's going to save us all. I really hope so, because right now the Supreme Court is the only thing standing in the way of complete anarchy and chaos. And that is scary when you think about it. You have one court that has the responsibility and has the ability to right all of these wrongs. And that is very scary to me. I don't know about you. It sure to hell scares the hell out of me. What if this decision was allowed to stand? What exactly does this mean on another level? Well, what it means is the rules for impeaching a president basically are left up to judges or individuals like this particular Secretary of State. Generally, you have to be impeached in the House of Representatives by a majority vote. It's going on right now at this time against Joe Biden. And then it goes to the Senate for a trial, and it requires 2/3 of the Senate to actually remove a president from office. If this is allowed to stand, Well, there's no need for impeachment and a 2/3 vote. Clearly, our founders intended for it to be very difficult to get rid of a candidate, to get rid of a president, and by extension, get rid of Donald Trump. The Democrats are afraid of this man, and they know he's going to right a lot of the wrongs that are going on in our society right now, and that scares the living you-know-what out of them. So let's hope that the Supreme Court will take this up quickly and do the right thing. If they don't, then they are going to print these ballots without Donald Trump's name. I know in Colorado, for example, that if an appeal is not granted by the beginning of January, they will go ahead and print the ballots, send the ballots out without Donald Trump's name on them. So we'll just have to see exactly where and how this goes. I encourage each and every one of us to be prayerful, to think about this, to please share this video. Comment below if you have any comments or questions for me. I'd love to hear from you. You need to go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already done so you'll have my fresh videos as they come out, because I got a lot to say on this subject and related subjects. If you share this video with anybody that might need to understand what's going on, if you have a friend that's indoctrinated by the woke media, by the woke left, send it to them. Let them listen to what I have to say so they can make up their own minds and educate themselves accordingly. As I always say, my friends, keep that free mind and never give up. Until next time, I am J.R. Dukes.